game.
Number 4 is not re-airing Gundam, which I agree with. It is a fail, but unfortunately it's not our failure. It's the failure of the parent company who owns Gundam, who isn't really interested right now in trying to get Gundam at least onto our TV network. So we hope to one day be able to air Gundam because we love it. But right now it's just not possible. Of course, everyone doesn't know that, so they might think we're just choosing not to air Gundam, but that is definitely not the case. And then last is airing DBZ Kai, which was, I would say, a highly predictable answer.
Sure.
You know,
millions of people seemingly are disagreeing with that number 5 fail on a weekly basis.
But I mean, you know, original Dragon Ball Z fans who like the Bruce Falconer music and would rather have.
I mean, I definitely understand not liking Kai if you don't like Kai. I mean, that's fine. But again, we've done way worse stuff than that.
But yeah, so those were all of your fails. So thank you guys for going to our Toonami Facebook and leaving us comments and going to the Adult Swim page and posting when they talk about Toonami. So keep that up. We love your feedback, even if we don't agree with it. but we do love your feedback, and we want to keep hearing from you about what you think is working and what you think isn't.
And you can also check us out at toonami.tumblr.com to get additional show-based information. Most of the
promos, GIFs.
Yeah, most of the pre-flight stuff is off the Facebook page.
Well, let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah, so our next is our sneak peek, which is another word that always looks spelled wrong to me. But
you're crazy.
Those
that's
damn homophones.
That's because you're
I'm
a crazy
also
person.
A crazy person, and I can barely spell my own name. But in fairness to myself, my name is difficult to spell. So this is a game review that Dennis did for Dragon Ball Xenoverse. I don't know why our background is. That's just not. Don't watch this segment of the show.
I've always loved me some Dragon Ball, but most of the Dragon Ball games have been pretty forgettable. Until now. The new one's called Dragon Ball Xenoverse, and they finally got it right. Fun starts right away. You choose your fighter, and let the beatings begin. After learning the ropes in a few classic warm-up battles, off to Toki Toki City to really prove yourself. You can train with your favorite characters, learn their skills, then use them against your enemies. The more guys you take down, the more your power goes up, just like on the show. As you travel through time restoring Dragon Ball history, you'll also revisit legendary battles. These can be tough to beat, but keep training and perfecting your technique, and soon enough, you'll be kicking some major ass. Z-Rank, baby. Hardest fighting game out there, but it sure is fun. And if you're a Toriyama fan, it's a must. Dragon Ball Xenoverse gets an 8 out of 10. Hey, the gang's all here.
I have not played Xenoverse, and you have not.
I haven't either. That was Dennis Maloney who does some of our reviews, and he likes fighting games. And the reason I haven't played it is because I don't really play fighting games very often.
Yeah, I went to school the day that everybody learned how to play Street Fighter and skipped school and went to the arcade. So I've consistently gotten my ass kicked in fighting games for going on 30 years.
Yeah.
So I don't do things that I don't like.
Yeah, but the game has gotten good reviews in general.
Yeah, it looks fun.
And we felt like it was time to sort of do a game review for, you know, there's all kinds of licensed games for various Toonami shows, but usually they're not great. And this game's gotten a decent amount of acclaim for being a good licensed game.
Very much in the universe, and mechanic-wise seems like a fun fighting game. If you like fighting games, and there's nothing wrong with fighting games, I just am not good at them, so I don't do them.
So yeah, that was Dennis's contribution, and
so, yeah, that'll run this Saturday night in. Oh, I wonder. No, I guess we don't have KidVid anymore. So yeah, it'll run inside DBZ Kai in that first break.
And then our next segment, we are hearing from Dana Swanson, the voice of Sarah, and she has a new installment of Mobile on the Move. So she is going to talk about a couple games she is super into, a couple mobile games. So let's go ahead and hear from Dana and her current episode of Mobile on the Move. Here we go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Dana Swanson, the voice of Sarah from Toonami. I'm coming through the internet. It's Mobile on the Move. Mobile on the Move. Mobile on the Move. So today I'm here to talk about two games. A Dark Room for iOS and the Ensign, its prequel, also for iOS. I played these both last year, and they were two of my favorite games, so I really, really wanted to go back through and play them both again. So a dark room is what's called an incremental game or an idle game, and that's a type of game where you may walk away and let some stuff happen, and then you come back and, oh my gosh, I have a bunch of wood, or oh my gosh, I've got a bunch of fur. Where'd that come from? Let me check my traps. Cool. Most idle games are done in a style of art known as ASCII art, ASCII, where it's this really, really simple black text on white or white on black or what have you. It leaves a lot to the imagination. What is happening in this game? If you're going to play either one of these games, I hope you like reading. You know, you might as well just read Cormac McCarthy's The Road, because that's basically this game.
Allow me to read some selections to you. Nightmares won't stop. Flashes of a compass. The thirst to explore is unbearable.
Both of these games are really minimalist. You wake up in a dark room and you stoke a fire. It seems at first like there's nothing to it. Some people on the App Store actually wrote into the developer and they're like, this is a ripoff, nothing's happening. Just you wait, stuff happens. Some builder lady just like ambles on in there and makes you go into a forest, build a town, and then venture out into the world beyond. It's crazy. It's post-apocalyptic madness. An old man just killed me with a knife. The thing with the dark room is that everything can only be experienced once. So there are a lot of things that I remember being surprises when I very first played it, that during the replay weren't as exciting. They were still memorable and fun. Those shocks and those like, oh my gosh, I just got killed by what? They didn't hit as hard. Within both of these, as the game goes on, you discover who all of the characters are, or maybe some, not everybody. You discover who you really are with some of the choices that you make. Maybe you push your villagers too hard. Maybe you locate a portal reference or you don't. Maybe you 100% all the way. Let me tell you what, I am not hell-bent on 100% on either of these. I've tried and it's hard. You venture into all these different houses and caves and cities and schoolyards. You fight gaunt men and you take their teeth. You fight feral terrors. You fight all of these things that are really left up to the imagination because, hey, guess what? You're just reading it and you're touching a button like this to say that you're punching or slashing. This is a mystery wrapped in a riddle, wrapped in a game I bought, wrapped in a text. Just a text from a friend. Within the Ensign, which is the prequel, it's a little bit easier to play multiple times because you are being asked to do you make different choices? Do you take food or do you not? Eggs are on the move. I give the games as a suite 8 out of 10 pieces of cured meat. They'll open your mind. What? Where am I? Okay.
This is Dana Swanson signing off. You can drop me a line at YouTube, Twitter, or Tumblr at @DanaIsAGirl. Bye.
Jason, do you think you would push your villagers too hard in those games?
Oh, I know I would. I would. My villagers, I've played it. My villagers would die. They did die. I pushed them too hard and got what I wanted out of them.
They die. I mean, as long as you don't die.
I mean, in a post-apocalyptic scenario, I'm not going to be the charitable Jason you see before you right now.
Good Lord. But thank you so much, Dana. That was great. We're going to have more mobile on the moves.
I love it because Dana is the Toonami staff member that plays the most mobile games and sort of always knows what's going on in mobile gaming. She plays a lot of Steam games, and you and I are more console guys. Like, just being honest, I don't play that many app games because I don't use my phone that way. It's mostly, my phone is mostly used for business, so when I am not working, I try to have
leisure time.
I try to have my phone away from me because otherwise I'll be on Twitter or working, and so as a result I just don't play that many mobile games.
Right. Yeah, and we are lucky enough to be able to play console video games during our workday. So instead of sneaking off to the bathroom to play mobile games for an hour, we can just do it in our offices.
But Dana prefers mobile games, I think, to some degree because she likes the compactness of them, and so she's always got a good sort of point of view on them. So I'm glad we get to finally do some mobile game reviews because we can't do them on air. So.
Right. Yeah.
But you'll see more from her, and I think next week you'll see a Bloom Room.
Most likely.
And I think the final thing we have today is a fan promo that Gil actually picked out. So do you want to...
Yeah, so this is from Toonami Faithful's Paul, and I'm going to mispronounce Paul's last name.
Priscrillo?
Priscrillo. Priscrillo.
Sorry, Paul.
Sorry, Paul. But thank you for all that you do, and thank you for this spot, which is a character spot for Ichigo. And like some of the other fan promos, like it's definitely doesn't feel like 100% a Toonami promo, but definitely feels like other than it being a scratch track spot would be pretty much.
It gets pretty close. You know, we don't really do character. People always ask us to do character promos like we used to do, but we don't do them very often because most of our shows have so many characters. It's like you'd have to do 20.
And it's also, we just don't have, we don't have that much time to make them, but we also just don't have a lot of time to air them. So it's typically we're either doing a lineup promo or a show promo or a game review.
To maximize.
To be able to, have it be enough of a piece, but there's just not room to do multiple things.
So, but this is a fan promo in the style of the ones we used to do for shows like Dragon Ball Z and Gundam Wing, and it's for Bleach. So let's check it out.
Ichigo Kurosaki, a substitute sword, he gained power by mistake, and he now must learn to harness this limitless power, or risk losing not only his friends, but everything around him. Bleach, every Saturday night at midnight, tonight on Adult Swim.
Yeah, that's a solid.
Yeah, even
Toonami
used the
promo.
trademark Adult Swim, which means that was off of a sales spot because we never used the trademark.
The TM, but you guys did great. And again, as Gil said, thanks to Toonami Faithful for everything they do to continue to help Toonami trend, to continue to support, to continue to make a weekly podcast about Toonami, which is just bananas to me still.
As we do a weekly.
I know. And they have more Twitter followers than I do, so nice work, guys.
Step up your game.
I know. But that's our broadcast for this week.
So yeah, hopefully we won't have a weekly Toonami fails. It'll just be every decade or so. We'll be able to squeeze enough failure out to make a show, but hope you enjoyed it, and hope you tune in this Saturday.
And we'll see you next week for another pre-flight.
Welcome back to another episode of Toonami Preflight, our fifth in the series of 400.
And I am Jason DeMarco.
And I am Gil Austin.
And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff today. We're going to talk about Sword Art Online Season 2, which will be premiering this Saturday in Toonami. The dub is premiering. We're going to talk about the question of the week, which is who is your favorite villain? We asked you guys on our Toonami Facebook page, and you answered to the tune of a couple thousand answers. So that's awesome.
Which is facebook.com/Toonami. If you have not already liked us, please do so now.
And then we're going to give you a sneak peek of our little goodie for the week and show a fan promo, and again, hear from Mr. Steve Bloom.
Mr. Steve Bloom in Bloom's room.
But let's kick it off with the discussion of Sword Art Online 2, which will air this Saturday at 1 a.m. So before we talk about Sword Art, why don't we just we showed the promo last week, but let's just refresh everyone's memory.
Sure. If you weren't watching last week, you missed out on a great birthday episode. But the good news is
you
you'll
screwed
be able
up.
to see,
It's over.
The Sword Art 2, Sword Art Online 2 promo.
Yeah, let's check that out.
Very excited for these games to actually come into existence, and I really hope that we get to that point that I'm not too old by the time. I guess it wouldn't matter if you're too old because you could just go into the virtual world. The whole point.
That's right.
But it does seem like at some point you should just stop going into the games that keep killing you. Like, just to play devil's advocate, but
I don't know.
Sometimes the game is just that great.
I think I might risk it.
I would definitely.
So Sword Art 2 is curious because it's the Sword Art Online series is adapted from a bunch of young adult novels, and this season Sword Art 2 is from, I think, books 6 through 8 or something. But it's kind of curious because it sort of reboots everything. It's like a year later after the events of Sword Art Online, and it concerns another multiplayer online virtual game it's called Gun Gale Online that everyone's playing. And basically this character Death Gun, who is the coolest looking
That's
guy.
a pretty straightforward name too. You don't really mess around with that. If you see Death Gun, I think you're probably going to die.
You're not going to have to wonder sort of what his deal is. His name is Death Gun, so it's like, okay. So he starts killing people, and basically Kirito from the first season is contacted by the government, and they want him to go sort of undercover into Gun Gale Online and try to figure out how this guy Death Gun is killing people virtually, which
allegedly killing. We can't legally say that it's his fault.
Which shouldn't be able to happen anymore based on the events of the previous show. So that's the setup. They do introduce a new character who I like a lot, Sinon, who is a female sniper, and she's got a weird thing where she's afraid of guns because of a personal trauma. So for her, and this is actually one of the ongoing themes of the show, is dealing with trauma, but for her, going into Gun Gale Online is a way for her to cope with
her immersion therapy to get over this
traumatic
event.
And I like her. I like her a lot, and I don't know if she was created to answer some of the criticisms that the first series received, which is that the women were sort of damsels in distress, like the character of Asuna, who was sort of a sexualized damsel in distress.
Right.
And Sinon is much more of she's sort of a damsel in distress in the real world, but in the virtual world, she's much more of a badass. Yeah. And
there's a pretty great moment at the end of episode 2 where she really dominates.
Yeah. So I like her a lot, and I like that she's a sort of a more well-rounded female character, if you will. And even in this series, I know that in the later episodes, they sort of dovetail and hang out with Asuna more, and she becomes sort of a main character and definitely more assertive in her own right. So I think they made an effort to sort of flesh everybody out. The big difference between these shows is that Sword Art Online takes place in a world that is all fantasy, and everybody has fantasy powers. And in the new game, Gun Gale is more like a post-apocalyptic sort of Fallout
or Call of Duty-ish sort of shooter game.
But I like Gun Gale Online better.
Yeah, I would totally play Gun Gale Online. But even if there was a chance that you would die, I would still play. It looks super fun.
But for me, what I like about these shows, because this is the curious thing about these shows is they very much divided Toonami fandom. From what I can see from your comments out there, people are either like, "Oh, it's so great," or "Oh, it's terrible," or
and I think especially like the hardcore fans for both this and the first season of Sword Art have already seen the episodes, which is not necessarily the case for a lot of the shows that we air. But this is, oh, I can't wait for this, or why did you bother doing this?
Right.
And that's really the two camps.
And someone actually said to me, "It's gonna kill Toonami," which is like, guys, there's no one show that's going to kill Toonami.
Yeah, there is no virtual bullet that can stop Toonami in regular
Death Gun
real
isn't
life.
going to kill Toonami. But the first Sword Art did very well for us, and we're hoping the second one does equally as well, if not better. I think what I like about Sword Art is it's definitely a very over-the-top, melodramatic teen kind of anime.
Emo, sort of.
Yeah, and that's an aspect of it that I'm not crazy about because it's just so over-the-top. But it's beautifully animated, and they always make time to have some dope battles.
Yeah, I mean, the action is great, and they go a little sort of bananas with it, but for the most part, the game mechanics and it seems like a game you would want to play, and that is actually, other than the fact that you're virtually in this world and do all these things, but it seems like functionality exists and that they've actually thought it through, and it's not just your mom writing a game anime and getting all the details wrong.
Crazy game.
Everything else.
Yeah, and I mean, people often talk about this show and they refer to Dot Hack, which is something we showed 10 years ago on Toonami, which was also about people trapped in a virtual world. But I think in some ways, Dot Hack was ahead of its time because this feels more believable in an era where virtual reality is actually becoming true or reality, and people are playing massive multiplayer online games in massive numbers. It feels maybe more plausible, and maybe I just think they do a better job with giving you a little bit of action. The Dot Hack was kind of slow in parts, but I can definitely see where people would say this is a
draw similarities.
Yeah, this is. I don't think it's a rip-off, but it definitely has similarities. But I feel like this show wouldn't really be as popular if we didn't live in an era where it felt vaguely plausible.
Yeah, and
maybe I'm wrong.
And that the games seem like games you are already playing, and that all you need is the technology to make that last step. And
yeah.
Then you're killing people.
And then you're killing people virtually with your special sniper gun. I mean, basically, it's Destiny.
Yeah.
You know. So let's. Why don't we have a clip? Do you want to show the?
So this is from the first episode, which premieres this Saturday at 1 a.m. And this is sort of towards the end of the episode, so if you're super spoilery, this doesn't really spoil a whole lot.
Plug your ears.
We're done.
We're done. Classic.
Kirito seemed very upset for a lot of different reasons in that clip. Not a whole. It seemed to be conflicting interests. I guess he's just really doesn't want to relive all the death and horror that he went through before. But
yeah,
when the government calls for you to go into a virtual game and figure out who's being killed, I think you got to step up.
Even if you've already done it, it's time to do it again.
Yeah,
you're like
you're the best for a reason.
I got to shovel that snow again. God. So that's it. Sword Art 2 premiering this Saturday at 1 a.m.
At 1 a.m.
Yeah. So let's move on to the question of the week,
which is, who's your favorite cartoon villain? And villain is one of those words that, when spelled correctly, I always think is incorrect.
Villain.
Villain. I always think it should be I-A-N, and I've put it wrong on air before in past lives of Toonami. But anyway, be that as it may.
So you guys commented on our Facebook page and on the Adult Swim Facebook page and let us know what your favorites were. And before we get to your favorites, we're going to talk more importantly
about our favorites. Specifically, your favorites to start.
We'll start with
the
mine.
most important. Jason's favorites.
So I have 3 that I want to talk about. I think one of them is going to be obvious to anyone who knows me even a little bit, but we're still going to go through this exercise. I love villains. Villains are usually my favorite part of any show. I believe in catharsis and enjoying watching people be mean so that I am not mean. And I also think villains
it's not working.
I also think villains are usually more interesting. So the first villain I want to highlight is Shishio from Rurouni Kenshin. Shishio is another manslayer like Hitokiri Batosai. He came after him and basically is double-crossed by the government, by the Meiji government, and they burn him alive, and so he walks around with bandages on, basically wanting to rule over everybody and take revenge on anyone involved with what happened to him. He has a code, but he's sort of a sociopath, so his code is more like, I told you not to step over that line, so now I'll cut your head off. It's not like a code that might make sense to everyone else.
Sure, and Anton Chigurh.
Yeah, and he's probably as good as Kenshin at fighting, if not better, and basically his powers are he has no sweat glands, so somehow he overheats and bursts into flames if he fights too much, which is kind of stupid but awesome.
That's also the way I fight.
The coolest thing about him, the coolest detail, is that his blade often lights on fire because it's been soaked in the blood and fat of his enemies, so he can just light his sword on fire because it's coated in the fat of people he's killed. But I have more to say about Shishio, but for now, I'm going to show you guys a clip that for me illustrates one moment of why he's such a badass. So
I feel like maybe she was talking to the wrong person pleading for the fight to stop.
So in case you hadn't watched that show, what you're witnessing there is basically Shishio's girlfriend gets in the way when Kenshin is about to beat him to keep Kenshin from hurting him, and Shishio takes the opportunity to stick his blade through her to get to Kenshin, which is some
Pretty villainous.
That's some cold-blooded shit. And fun fact,
I don't think we're supposed to be swearing.
Shishio eventually fights Kenshin to the point where all the blood in his body evaporates and he bursts into flames and dies. And later you see him go to hell where he meets with his girlfriend and talks about taking over hell. So that is a villain I can get down with.
So that's the long con, to stab your girlfriend and then set up your hell takeover plan later on down the road. So
also voiced by the one and only Steve Bloom. I like all my villains or heroes to have Steve Bloom's voice. So then the next one is going to come as no surprise to anyone who knows me, the Lich from Adventure Time. Let's show our Lich clip.
War never ends.
So yeah, I love the Lich because he's just, one thing I love about the way they treat him in Adventure Time is he's just never anything but totally terrifying. And what you just saw was the last episode before the Lich got sort of turned into, through good magic, I guess, got turned into a little baby Lich, which actually we just discovered, if you're currently watching the show, that the true Lich still resides in the baby Lich, and I think very soon will be coming out. But what I love about the Lich is he's just single-minded. You don't really know the origin story of the Lich. Is you know that in some way the Mushroom War created him, but you don't know how or why. I think it's sort of that he's possessed a human. Like, he's just, you get the idea that he's existed for thousands of years because he keeps talking about thousands of monsters before the light there was darkness and all the monsters lived in the darkness, and all he ever wants is to destroy all life, period, straight up. There's no, and his downfall is always that he doesn't take people seriously, but he's done horrible stuff like kill Prismo. He's done, he's done all kinds of horrible things. So it's always pure luck that the good guys get away with getting rid of the Lich. But also my favorite is when he killed Billy the hero and wore his skin to fool Finn, which is pretty much some cold-blooded shit.
So I was going to ask why the Lich became your Twitter persona, but I think you answered my question preemptively through your description of why you like the Lich. But I remember you saying, I think I'm going to change my Twitter persona to be the Lich, and all I could think of was, what? But it seems to suit you well.
The reason I did it was because I was getting a promotion at work at the time, and I thought it would be funny if I was promoted to being
Lich.
a pure evil being. And I just had a lot of fun pretending to be the Lich. So I'm a huge nerd, and the Lich appeals to me. Definitely my favorite villain right now, my favorite Adventure Time character as well.
Do you have other Lich persona in life that appeal to you as well, or is it
I've always
on Adventure Time?
No, I've been a Dungeons and Dragons player. I've always loved Liches. The idea of an undead sorcerer who's extending their life through the use of evil magic is completely awesome. The Lich himself came from, I believe, was inspired by the character from the Black Cauldron, which is from a series of books. So Liches have been around forever in lore, and I've always thought they were hilarious and awesome.
Probably not their original intended purpose, but great nonetheless.
So then my final one is the best.
Also not a surprise. Is this the ultimate not a surprise?
Maybe. Probably.
Okay.
So my final favorite villain is Shah Aznable from Mobile Suit Gundam, from the Gundam Universal Century timeline. Shah is the main antagonist for Mobile Suit Gundam. He then becomes sort of a friend, anti-hero friend of everybody in Zeta Gundam, and then in Shah's counterattack he comes back as a sort of pure villain. But he's the archetype for the bad guy in any Gundam. And I'm only going to show a short clip here from Shah's counterattack because it makes me laugh. So here's a little bit of Shah at work. So in Shah's counterattack, basically Shah is going to drop. He feels that humanity has not pushed itself forward enough to evolve. He's sort of a new type. Amuro's a new type, which means they have psychic abilities. They've kind of evolved beyond sort of normal humans. He feels humanity is stagnating on Earth, which is a polluted kind of backwater. So his solution is to drop asteroids on the Earth and destroy it, make it inhabitable by killing millions of people and forcing everyone to move into colonies where he thinks they will evolve.
Basic city planning.
So the thing with Shah is he's what I like about him is he joins up to get revenge on the Zabi family who killed his father. His father was the guy who created Xeon, and who he ends up, which he ends up representing. So he joins up basically in a Count of Monte Cristo style to become friends with the Zabi family who had his father killed and kill them. Then he meets Amuro, and then he and Amuro sort of have a constant, they're always circling each other, always dueling. The thing that I like about Shaw is he never has equipment that's up to snuff, but he's always so good at what he's doing that he's a huge threat regardless. So Amuro will often beat him, but Amuro always he's more developed as a new type, and his Gundam is always the biggest, most badass thing. Shaw is always using just a standard sort of modified Zaku or Gelgoog or Neon, ship of some kind, Xeon ship of some kind, but he's so good that just his pure skill makes him somebody that not even Amuro can really test, you know what I mean? That even Amuro has to worry about it. Yeah. So I really like him. I love that he's got this revenge backstory, and I love that he wears this stupid mask and is smooth as hell. So I will always love Shaw. He's definitely one of my absolute favorite villains. So that's it for my faves. Do you have any Shaw opinions?
I'm a fan. Yeah, I like that. I like the gentlemanly nature of Shaw. That he's definitely not just out to kill everybody. There's a plan in place, and that I think he was raised right.
He's look at him. He's got tea. He's one of those good guys that thinks he's one of those guys who can be a bad guy, but thinks he's the good guy the whole time. He's just super determined.
Has been a really horrible.
Yeah.
Mindset to have. But in an animated show, I think.
It's horrible in the animated show. He's about to kill millions of people and has to be stopped.
But he gets stopped.
And he and Amuro die fighting together because they push their abilities so far they basically explode reality and disappear because their new type abilities.
That's how Jason and I are going to go out in the end.
Yeah. Well, first I like to come into work every morning and tell Gil I came here to laugh at him.
Sure. Makes me smile.
So those are my favorite villains. Let's get to yours.
Yeah, so I also have three, continuing in our exercise of never actually playing the game the way we've asked everyone else to play it. My first is from Star Blazers, and I don't know how much of this is just that this was my first and favorite early anime, but I think that it's also that he's a great villain, but it's Deathlock from Star Blazers, and then we have a clip here that I like on many, many different levels. I like that clip because he's clearly made everyone chant his name over and over again walking in, and just the dismissive way of like, no, that's enough, that's enough.
I'm humble.
That he has so much cronyism around him that it just sort of sickens him, and he has little dots, and people have to know they're standing on those very specific things, or he just knows where they all are, but that anyone can be dropped out in space at any time for the slightest transgression. This just makes me laugh, and I feel like
I think he might be the original inspiration for Dr. Evil. Actually,
yeah. It's very much like a Bond villain of like, I expect you to die.
Well, in the '80s voiceover with
the Crypt, not the strongest voice acting performance.
Crypt with his sub Igor. Yes, master. You've planted Deathlock mines.
But yes, that there's a civility that needs to be maintained, or you get blown out into space.
You toast people, but you don't. You're not rude about it, or you've got to be dropped into the airlock.
Clearly, that's their last night in space, but we don't have to laugh about it.
You like a civilized villain.
I do. Speaking of civilized villains, my next villain, slightly less civilized, but also nobility, is Vegeta, which was a strongly represented through the rest of the fan comments.
Yep. Everyone loves Vegeta.
And like Char and Deathlock, Vegeta starts off as a villain and then eventually makes the turn to sort of anti-hero, and then there's always sort of that moment of like trying to find the way out. It's like a side angle to come back at it. But this first clip that we have for Vegeta's early on in DBZ, we played sort of around this when we were talking about Kai a few weeks ago, but I think that this pretty much sums up Vegeta's villainosity.
Villainous appeal.
Yes, that.
So
yeah, once again, I guess maybe the willingness to sacrifice your own men as a leader classifies yourself as a villain in my book.
Well,
When I
he
see that
wasn't
clip, I
willing.
always-
He did that. That wasn't even that. He wasn't willing to sacrifice him. He just straight up killed him for fun because he just was annoyed that he couldn't get the job done. He wasn't like, I know you might die.
It's the wave after wave of your own men. That you don't really think about it as a strategic move. It's just taking out the trash. The only thing I think that would make that better is if somehow when he takes Raditz' hand, he just touches him and he explodes, and it was just over with that. But I think that Vegeta, well-documented villain. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean everyone loves
many
Vegeta.
surprises.
I think people love him because he turns into a good guy, but retains his edge. You know that you always know. I think people, and this is a good thing that anime always does. They have heroes that, and something that when we were kids, one of the things that drew us to anime was that the heroes will have complex feelings and emotions. They'll go through changes as people. You know, when you watch a lot of American cartoons, the bad guy is the bad guy. Like,
the white hats and the black hats.
Yeah, when we were kids, Lex Luthor was never going to be anything but totally evil. And it was fascinating to see someone like Shaw or Vegeta who